What's up? This is Ben. I am already on fire tonight. How you guys doing? We are here on a Sunday night, and I have the awesome Finn McKenty from Punk Rock MBA YouTube channel, and he's an awesome dude. He's a genius marketer. He has been involved with this whole scene for a very long time. He does some of my absolute favorite musical interviews from artists I love. And I'm stoked that he's joining the show tonight. So I'm going to bring him up on stage. Finn, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll start off with Punk Rock MBA. Like, I guess this is what you're probably like most known for right now. You've got 688,000 subs on YouTube between your channel and the Punk Rock MBA channel. How long ago did you start this project? Like, how long ago did that happen?
September of 2017.
Damn. So you've been at it for a while.
Yep.
Like, what motivated you to start your channel?
Well, originally, I just wanted to learn how to use YouTube as a marketing channel. That's, my career is in product design and marketing. And I said, well, YouTube, I started out doing like print journalism and stuff like that way back in the day. Then as print stopped becoming relevant, then I started blogging and I did a couple blogs that got reasonably popular. I stopped doing those. I just kind of ran out of steam. And then I said, well, I guess YouTube is now, where the action is. And so I just wanted to get, a couple thousand subscribers because I felt like that would be enough for me to say, that I understand this as a marketing platform, and it ended up getting much more popular than that to my surprise. And I said, well, I guess it'd be dumb for me to quit now. So here I
am. So, like your channel, obviously, like when you first started it off, it was, to figure things out with the marketing, and all that. But as your channel continued to grow, it is obvious that with the times, with the change in everything, it has to evolve as well. And so like, what are some ways that like, since when you first started to where you're at today, that you've seen like the biggest evolution of your channel?
Yeah. Well, it's really just become much more narrowly focused over time. You sort of learn what your audience wants, what they like, what they don't like, and, focus on that. So in the beginning, I was actually talking about business, which is where the name Punk Rock MBA comes from, because I was sort of emphasizing the MBA part, even though I'm a liar and I don't have an MBA. But that was sort of my initial focus. But to put it bluntly, nobody cared about me talking about business. And I said, well, I've written about music before, and so I sort of, I understand how to talk about this. Let me try that, and then that took off. So I sort of focused on that, and then as the channel sort of went on, I realized what my viewers like and don't like. And so now it's just like really specifically focused on millennial nostalgia for rock fans.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen like a lot of your videos where you're basically doing like the history of a certain band, like the crazy history of like Green Day and stuff like this. Like, I don't know, I love it. But obviously you've been doing this for so long and you're so consistent with putting out content that like it's hard to think that after all of this time you can't help but feel almost hostage to your channel. I mean, do you ever feel that way?
Well, I mean, it's like any other product, if it's like, if you're McDonald's, do you remember, I mean, you might not be old enough, but do you remember when McDonald's sort of tried to be healthy and they started like making salads and kind of emphasizing that stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm 34. So like, yeah,
okay, you're
like,
old enough. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. You look much younger. So
Thank you.
good. Yeah. So they tried to do the healthy thing, which, it's cool they did that, but people just weren't having it. They realized that people don't, that the market does not want McDonald's to make salads. And so they went back to making Big Macs and fries. And, I mean, I guess maybe you can still get a salad there. I don't know, but people want Big Macs and fries and McRibs. They don't want salad from McDonald's. So, I don't really look at it as hostage. It's just like, as a marketer, your job is to find out what people want and give it to them.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean,
YouTube audio variety is cancer for YouTube, like, or for social media in general. It's like, if you are, if you become well known on TikTok for doing like pressure washing videos, like you need to make pressure washing videos forever. Like you can't make, if you pressure wash driveways, you're going to get backlash if you pressure wash sidewalks or decks or something.
Yeah. Right. I mean,
That's right.
and you just got to follow like, yeah, like what your niche is, you know what I
Yep.
mean? And like, you got to find what's working for you and what doesn't.
Yep.
And everybody has this. Everybody has
Yep.
certain strengths and weaknesses. So why aren't we focusing more on our strengths? I've noticed this with a lot of people, like maybe at least some of my friends, they'll be like out there. Like I run in several circles. Like I'm a musician, but I'm also like in politics world or
Mhm.
whatever. And like people will try to like run for office or something when their
Yeah.
specialty is actually doing content and releasing
Right.
content on YouTube. And if they wanted to make a difference in the world, this is probably their best way to do it.
Yeah,
It's not
absolutely.
out talking to people in
I mean,
some cases.
I understand why people feel that way, because most people start YouTube or something to be creative.
Yeah.
And, that's not really what it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's making a product. And so I understand that for the people who view it as like a form of self-expression, for them it's frustrating, to realize that actually the sort of bounds of what they can create and still be successful are pretty narrow.
Yeah.
And so I understand that. For me, it's not a form of self-expression. So as long as I can make things that, people enjoy, then that's my job. And it doesn't need to, like, I'm not interested in most of the music that I talk about, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be
Especially
something I'm
ska.
interested in. Yeah, it
Especially
doesn't, I mean, it doesn't have to be something I'm interested in for me to make a video about it. I'd say probably 80% of the stuff I talk about, I have zero interest in.
that is perfectly fair. But you're great at spinning it in a way that, is presentable to the viewer.
Yep. I
And that is why you're good at what you do.
Because I give people what they want. I summarize Wikipedia. My job is to tell people facts, basically to tell millennial men facts about music they liked in high school.
Yeah, I know. A lot of them are stuck in the it's not a phase, and I'm one of them. So
All of them are. I mean, millennials
yeah,
are the most, like, they're just absolutely like shameless slaves to nostalgia. I mean,
it's true.
millennials,
I
it's
mean, I
it's
was at
wild.
Furnace Fest this last year, and I mean, I'm actually wearing a Furnace Fest shirt right now, and
Okay.
that lineup was wild, but that was like nostalgia for me, and I
Right.
haven't stopped talking about it since fucking September.
It's
So
look, millennial, for anybody listening that wants to make money, like, millennial nostalgia is free money.
there you go. That's great, and I mean,
Especially for like men. Millennial men are the easiest group to market to. All you have to do is say, "Hey, remember that thing you liked in high school?" And they'll throw money at you.
it's so wild you say that because Furnace Fest, which was actually just like a complete sausage fest.
Of course it was.
Uh,
It's guitar music.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so like you've kind of been all over the place. Like you've worked with, I'm just gonna list it:
Mhm.
Red Bull, Swiffer, Febreze, Abercrombie and Fitch, Element, DC Shoes, Quicksilver, and more. Obviously,
Mhm.
like in marketing, through what was it, the Academy, right? And
I've
also,
worked at a bunch of different agencies and startups and lots of different places and stuff. And yeah, my career has been in marketing and product design.
yeah. So, like, do you think that a lot of those skills that you learned from there translated really well into like the YouTube and
Mhm.
into like music marketing as well? And like, what would you say are the top skills you learned in those like
Yeah.
atmospheres that translated the best?
Well, at the end of the day, marketing and design are all about, it's just psychology at the end of the day. Your job is
Mhm.
to understand, or to find out what people want and then make it, and then find a way to convince them to pay you for it. I mean, that's the job. What should we make? Who should we make it for, and why? And so, like, for example, I think the place where I really learned this was working with Procter and Gamble, which was like back in the 2000s, mid to late 2000s. I did a lot of stuff, like you said, with Febreze, Swiffer, Tide, Bounce, a lot of these like big CPG brands.
Yeah.
And Procter and Gamble is like by far, in my opinion, the world's best marketing organization, specifically at consumer insight. Like they don't, they have like PhDs in cultural anthropology and stuff like that they hire, and cognitive
Wow.
psychology. They'll go into people's houses. They'll have a whole team of people go into someone's house and watch them do laundry for hours to
Right.
learn how people really, really, really use these products and what they want. And they have lots of different frameworks for this. My favorite one is they call it the ACB, which is accepted consumer belief, which is things that consumers believe. And these things may not be true, for example, people think that your hair needs to be nourished, which
Okay.
is factually, not true, because hair is not living tissue and therefore it can't be nourished.
Right.
But that's what people believe. And you have to meet people where they're at. You don't have a choice of, you can't tell people what to believe. And it doesn't matter if it's true or not. You just have to accept where they're at. And so if you notice in their marketing for like Pantene, which I don't know if they own that now, but they had Pantene at the time.
Right.
And if you notice in the marketing, they would use that language about how it nourishes your hair and stuff, even though like that's nonsense, but that's what people believe. And so, when it comes to like YouTube or the media business in general, I mean, your only option really is to tell your audience what they want to hear. Because if
Right.
you tell them things that they disagree with, they'll just get mad at you and go watch someone else. So,
Yeah, it's true.
yeah, I mean, and it's the same in the media business in general. For example, the New York Times has to say that Trump is bad, and Fox News has to say that Trump is good.
Yeah.
And imagine if the New York Times decided that they wanted, if they just genuinely, if there's a Republican candidate that they wanted to endorse, they couldn't do it, right? They couldn't
Right.
do it.
Right.
Nor could the Fox News do the same thing for some progressive candidate. They're not allowed. Their audience won't let them. And so really what it comes down to at the end of the day is like, it's applied psychology of like just understanding what people believe and then telling it back to them, And so for me, it's like, it took me a while it's incredibly obvious to say this now, but it took me a long time to realize that really what my audience wants is for me to validate their taste in music, to say
Yeah.
that thing you liked in high school is good.
There
So
you
that's
go.
what I do.
And you do it very well. I mean, I mean, I just watched your interview with Mike Herrera from MXPX
Mhm.
the other week. That's like that's my favorite band. So, yeah, like you literally just validated why MXPX is still the best band for me.
Exactly.
So,
And give people, you're giving people a dopamine hit, and especially for a lot of men, because the thing with a lot of like sort of the dorky millennial men that mostly watch YouTube, their identities are really heavily wrapped in the products they consume and the media they
true.
consume, right? So it's like they watch horror movies or they watch pro wrestling or they collect whatever, comic books or vinyl. It's like that's who they are, is the thing they consume, right? And
Right, right.
so if you are critical of the thing that they consume, they take that as a personal attack,
Yeah.
because that feels like an attack on who they are, because their identity is so wrapped up in what they consume. On the other hand, if you praise the thing that they consume, that gives them that dopamine hit. It feels like you're validating their existence as a human, because their identity is so intertwined with consumption.
And like, that's very true. So like there are certain truths in marketing that are always going to be true. Like if you can validate how somebody feels about something already, you're going to be successful with it,
Yes.
right? But also, like at least on the music side of things, it is constantly changing. Like music has evolved in an insane way over the
Yeah.
last like 15, 20 years. And like to me, it's exhausting. Like I remember I used to go, my old band used to like print CDs, and like that's not
Right.
even a thing that people do anymore. And obviously you're a huge advocate and proponent for like DIY, like letting people do things on their own.
Yeah.
And because the music scene is just constantly changing, um, I would assume that you think it's probably better for bands to kind of just stay the DIY route so that they can like kind of facilitate their own success and adapt better to the times. Because I mean, at the end of the day, who better to look out for yourself than you when it comes to
Mhm.
marketing?
Yeah, I do think that. However, I've stopped saying it because one of my audience's existing beliefs is that, so there's a concept in psychology called locus of control, which essentially believes or means refers to the idea of where do you believe that control over your life lies. If you have an external locus of control, you believe that you're controlled by factors outside of your control, like whatever, the government or fate or whatever it
Yeah.
is. If you have an internal locus of control, you believe that you are able to change, the outcome of your own life within reason. Obviously, you get struck by lightning, you get cancer, blah, blah, blah. And in general, having an internal locus of control is correlated with like better life outcomes and people just being happier and healthier. But in the world of alternative music, I would say that the vast majority of people have an external locus of control, right? They're really into being victims and believing that the world is out to get them and that they're screwed by the government or big business or something like that. And so I realized that when I would say, like, actually, it's awesome that things like DistroKid and Spotify exist, because now you can just get your music out there. Back in our day, you had to print CDs, blah, blah, blah. But they got furious about that because their belief is that the system is rigged against you and that the status quo is terrible, and that all these companies exist specifically for the purpose of oppressing independent musicians. And so I got a lot of backlash when I would say that stuff. And so I stopped.
It's kind of wild. I'm actually like, I'm trying to write a book right now. And I didn't intend to bring this up, but it's called Steal My Shit. And it's about, like how like the big, Napster, LimeWire and all that stuff that happened, I don't know, like 2004 to 2010, when that was really popular, people would just like steal music. I'm looking at like the correlation between like a lot of those bands like booming into success versus like now those don't exist. So like people aren't really stealing as much music in that way, at least. But it's kind of like made concert revenue drop significantly. I don't know what your opinion is. I'm obviously not like advocating for people to be pirates or break the law, but I think that there's a case to be made. Whereas like, back then, a lot of people like just getting this music out there, with LimeWire and people just stealing their stuff. A lot of bands got like huge during that time, and they weren't making the money off of like the stolen downloads, but their concert revenue was insane and through the roof. A lot of my favorite bands, really blew up during that time. And now I'm looking at it and like bands aren't really making as much money through streaming anyway. Unless they're like, even if they are big, they're really not making that much money. It's like thousandth of a penny per play or something like that.
Well, there's a lot of things about that aren't really true. But again, my audience's existing belief is that artists don't get paid anything from streaming. And anytime I challenge that, they get very angry. So I stopped doing it. Now, if you look it up, what a lot of people don't know, even though it's very like easy to find out, Spotify alone they're obligated to pay out 70% of their gross revenue to rights holders.
Interesting.
And you can look it up. They have deals with the labels. You can look it up. I don't remember the number, but they've paid out billions and billions and billions of dollars. So, and Spotify is not a profitable company. So the only people making money off of Spotify are artists.
That's
Spotify itself they've had like one profitable quarter or something like that.
Wow.
All the money goes to artists. But, the important thing is that nobody cares about facts.
That's
like,
I mean,
you can show people the data like printed out in black and white and show it to them with sources, and they won't believe it because nobody cares about facts. They care about their sort of core emotional beliefs about the state of the world, and anything that doesn't fit into their mental model of the world will be disregarded.
Do you think that this transition from like the physical music world into the more digital, it's been like, obviously I think that there's a lot more pros than negatives to it. But would you agree that like, do you think that like, with Spotify being so popular and these streaming services, that it's like a significant plus for these bands? Or do you like think that there's still a place where physical music can even exist anymore? Because I don't really think that physical CDs or anything has a place in the world at all.
Well, my audience's existing belief is that physical media is superior to digital. And my audience existing belief is that vinyl in particular is the superior way to listen to music. So, so that's what they believe.
I don't know if I would agree with them, but
no, it's objectively wrong. Vinyl objectively sounds worse than digital. And like on a physical level, it's like, for example, if you like, so I work with music producers and stuff for a living. And so I know lots about this stuff. Mastering for vinyl, like vinyl is physically incapable, because remember the way that vinyl reproduces sound is based on like the depth and width of a groove, right?
Yes, right.
And vinyl is, and because of that, the louder the music is, basically the deeper the groove is. And so vinyl is physically incapable of reproducing some kinds of music. For example, a Skrillex song can't be played on vinyl the way you hear it on the CD because it's too loud and the needle will fall out of the groove. So if you want to master that for vinyl, you actually have to change the sound of it to like reduce the, I guess it'd be the amplitude.
That's wild.
To make it less loud, so that vinyl is physically incapable of reproducing some sounds. every time you play vinyl, it sounds a little bit worse, right? Because it gets
Yeah,
worn
it's
out.
true. Yeah, it's very true.
But
And like,
but again, none of this stuff, you can tell people this until you're blue in the face. It doesn't matter because their existing
yeah,
mental model is that vinyl is superior.
you're absolutely right. And like, it's literally just feeding into this thing that like you're just like basically people who are selling vinyl is just feeding into like, their audience. Like this is something that they
Consumerism.
believe. It's
Yes,
just like what you're
it's yeah,
saying.
the audience believes this, and and if you want to make money, you just give the audience what they want, right?
Yeah, right. And you know, on that, I mean, you like teach people about like YouTube marketing. You're like a coach,
Mhm.
essentially, and you also coach bands with marketing.
Well, I haven't really worked with any bands in a really long time, but yes.
Okay. So you obviously focus more on YouTube, and like I'm assuming you take people through, what it looks like to be presentable, first of all, because you need to have a good brand.
Mhm.
Um, but then, the algorithm side to YouTube is wild. And that's where like your advice to stick to what you're good at comes in, right?
Well, the advice is to stick to what your audience wants, and you need to
Okay.
become good at that. Um, there's usually a gap between what you would like to do and what your audience wants, and your only choice is to give the audience what they want. And so the trick or the difficult move is that, like, if you're a business or a professional that wants to use YouTube to grow, you need to find a way to express what you want to say wrapped in something that your audience wants to hear about. And so it's very difficult. Like, basically, the more useful a piece of information is, the less views it's going to get on YouTube. Like, if you made a tutorial on, like, whatever, how to do whatever, calculus,
Yeah.
very unlikely that that's going to get a lot of views, as opposed to if you made a compilation of, like, the 22 fattest asses on TikTok.
Right. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't want to see ass on TikTok? I don't even have a TikTok. So, I mean, maybe that's where I'm failing at
You got to
marketing.
give people what they want, not what they need,
Right. Right.
because there's usually a
Um,
very big difference between those two things.
yeah.
You
No,
give
you're
them the
absolutely.
McDonald, you give them the Big Mac, not the salad.
Yes. Yes. I'm a big proponent of Big Macs at McDonald's and not
I'm not. I
salad.
mean, I don't like junk food. I would never eat junk food except for my wife. She likes junk food, but I would never eat it
I'm
if it was
trying
on
to
the
do
menu.
better. I've like, tried to shift like, cause there is a correlation between your physical health and your mental health.
Sure
And,
is.
I know this because like, I mean, my band used to do a lot of touring and we get basically free booze
Yeah,
every show. And, we'd load up on that and then we'd eat nothing but fast food when we were gone. It's not like we were going to the grocery store. And
yeah.
I think that like does directly play into a lot of the fact like that there's so many like depressed musicians out there.
Sure, they were
Um,
already depressed, and then they have this horrible, unhealthy lifestyle that makes it even worse.
Yeah, which is like I have a lot of respect for bands that will find time to go to the gym when they're on tour
Yeah,
and do all this stuff because like your mindset really does impact your success in
yeah,
everything in life. It's not, it's very physically obvious when a band is on stage not having a good time or at their end of the tour and they look just completely drained. And the draining side of tour is going to happen no matter what, but if you're at least trying to be healthy, you're going to make it through your tours, no problem.
yeah.
I've seen that happen a lot. Just a real quick, I am going to give a shout out to one of the sponsors, which is Blood of Tyrants Wine. This is the official spirit of 1776. Are you looking for a nice night in while sipping on the blood of your enemies and supporting the destruction of the tyrannical state? Look no further than Blood of Tyrants Wine. It's a nice Merlot distributed by activists you know and love. Blood of Tyrants.wine is the place to go. Use promo code FSM to get 10% off your first order. That's bloodoftyrants.wine. Click the link in the description below and use promo code FSM. All right.
Throw off the yoke of tyranny by purchasing this wine.
Yes. Yeah, they actually make some really good energy drinks too. It's like a raspberry tea type thing. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, I've had the wine too. I'm not really a wine guy. I've been trying to actually like move away from drinking so much anyway, because as we were saying, there is a direct relation to physical and
Rebellion
mental
through
health.
consumerism.
Yes, I mean, a lot of time that's what it is. But so I was gonna like So I was looking into this. I didn't really get to dive into it too far, but like, you had this like persona stuff you will hate, which was like kind of like satirical.
Mhm.
I don't know, kind of like talk about how you got into that.
Well,
'Cause that was-
I mean, a lot of people wrote for that. It wasn't just me. There's probably like 15
right,
other
right.
people or something like that wrote for that. So that was just a blog that I had for, I don't know, 5 years or 4 years or something like that. The way I came up with it is, I didn't really come up with it. I was with a friend of mine, and I had been doing a blog before that called Metal Inquisition. That was like we wrote about like thrash and death metal and stuff. And I wanted to start something new, and I was trying to figure out an idea for it. And I was with a friend of mine, and he was like, "Why don't you talk about stuff that you like and everyone hates? You'll never run out of content because I have basically the opposite taste to apparently the world or to the weird people. I like stuff that normal people like, which in our world is very unpopular. And so that was sort of the
Right.
idea is like praise things that I like, which tends to end up being things that alternative people hate.
Yeah. And you've also like done some writing for like Metal Sucks. And do you still write for them or
No,
no? That was just like you did some articles for them essentially.
for
Um,
probably 5 years, 6 years, maybe.
Nice. Was
Yeah,
that
they're
like a
great guys. They
good
sold it.
experience?
Yeah, they're awesome. They sold it, I think, a year and a half ago or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, they're awesome guys. I still talk to them, to all the guys from Metal Sucks and Metal Injection. They're awesome.
That's awesome. And then also on that, about 10 years ago, you had founded Creative Live. It was,
I
I
did
think,
not found it, but
okay.
I started working there about 10 years ago.
That's
My
right. Okay.
my
Okay.
friend Chase Jarvis, who I've known for probably 20 years or something, him and a guy named Craig Swanson started that company.
Okay. So tell us what that was about because that all kind of ties into your like the marketing and
Mhm.
everything as well.
Yeah,
So
Creative Live was acquired by Fiverr maybe a year ago or something like that. But it was a Silicon Valley venture-backed company startup that did online education for creative people. Primarily photographers was sort of like our main market because the founder, Chase Jarvis, was like a really well-known, or well, still is a really well-known photographer, and sort of started. People were doing all these like weekend workshops about photography, so you could pay $1,500 or whatever to go learn like wedding and portrait photography from somebody like in a group of 15 people or something, like at their studio on the weekend. And so this was around 2010 or 11, maybe 2011. Live streaming was starting to become more viable. And so they had the idea of like, hey, how about instead of doing these workshops in person where only 15 people can come and it costs $1,000, why don't we live stream them? We'll teach people how to do this, and then anyone in the world can watch it for free. And then if you want to buy the recorded version of it, we'll sell it for $200 or whatever, which is like a lot of money, but still way cheaper than going to the actual, in-person workshop. And so that ended up, and again, I think they just sort of were like, oh, let's just try this. And it ended up that like tens of thousands of people were, watching these, and there was obviously something there. So they raised a bunch of money, raised a Series a seed round and a Series A. I think it was like $8 million or something. And I came in after the Series A and right before the Series B. They were in the process of raising their Series B. And I helped Chase kind of put the deck together for all that. We raised, I think, 23 million or something for the Series
wow,
B. That was
amazing.
led by Greylock and Social Capital. Social Capital was Chamath Palihapitiya's venture company, which maybe still exists. And if anyone has heard his name, he's become really well known now. But back then, this was right after he had left Facebook and before he had become the Chamath that people know now from like the All In podcast and stuff. I worked
Nice.
there for 4 years, I think, from 2013 to 2017. My last job there was on Chase's content team. So there was 3 of us, I think, 3 or 4 of us that did all his content, like his podcast, his YouTube channel, his blog posts and social media and all that kind of stuff, producing all that kind of content.
I mean, and that like, so that obviously translates so well into everything you're doing now too.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming like as you were kind of finishing up there is kind of when the punk rock MBA was starting because you had mentioned
Yeah.
that was around 2017.
Yep.
And you've already known at this point releasing constant content
Yep.
is extremely important because if
Yeah.
you're
I've been
not
doing that
doing
since I
it,
was like 14.
that's great. I mean, this is like 101 for people. Like if you're not releasing constant continual content, as a band, as a company, no matter what.
Yep.
But especially in music, people are just going to forget about you.
Yep.
And this is like something I tell my friends' bands is like, I mean, maybe it doesn't make sense for you to put out an album if you've got 10 songs. Why aren't you like spacing it out, dropping some singles?
Because the existing belief is that albums are the sort of fundamental building block of rock music culture. And so challenging that belief is not going to go over well, as I'm sure you've experienced, that they,
oh yeah,
they react really emotionally to the idea of putting out singles because their belief is that there's something special about an album.
And they almost always don't listen to me, which is fine. Like I've done some work, not to the extent that you have, but like, marketing and stuff. I've helped manage a couple bands. I was also a talent buyer for a little while. So like, I know what you're supposed to, like, at least on the venue side, releasing content to get people interested in your shows. So they sell tickets, you know what I mean? It's the same way for musicians though. Like if you want to like sell your music or sell tickets to a show, you got to keep putting shit out there in front of people, or else they're going to forget about you. They're not just going to buy your tickets. They're not just going to go to your page and search for your page. You have to pop up on their feed.
I mean, they might if you're, I don't know, Bruno Mars or something, but
right.
For the rest of us, you got to work for it.
Absolutely. And kind of like taking it a little bit different. So you do speak a lot on like alternative culture with your show. What kind of role, what kind of role do you think alternative music plays in transforming the alternative culture? Because I know musical culture, like at least like when you go into a show, these are not like the same audiences. Obviously, everyone grows up and moves on with their lives and gets a job 10 years apart. But the scene definitely has a different feel to it. I don't know how often you go to, like, I'm sure you go to concerts, but
not very often, especially, we have a son and it's not easy to, go out at night and stuff. So I don't know that I'm like
a shift, you know what I mean? There's definitely been this shift, at least over like 10, 15 years. I mean, maybe it's just that I'm adult and I'm looking through an adult lens now. Instead of when I was like 20 years old and childish and drinking all the time. But I know that like the music I was listening to certainly impacted everything about my life at that time. And, so.
Well, I mean, there's always going to be a generation of teenagers making weird music that older people hate. That's never going to change.
Right.
Which is great. I'm happy about, like, even if I don't like it, I'm always in favor of like the younger generation doing something cool and different. Like I'm always on their side, no matter what, even if I hate it. In fact, like I probably should hate it. Like if I like it, then you're probably not taking enough chances.
Right.
But the interesting thing to me is that with rock music in particular, if you look at the people who headline most of these festivals, like these lineups literally could be from 2001. It's like Korn, Seven Dust, Guns N' Roses, Metallica, Disturbed, Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Like I literally could have seen this flyer 20 years ago and it could be unchanged. And so there's sort of I guess to me it's a problem of, that the guard has not changed. There's no, it's not like in hip hop or pop.
Why do you think that is? I've been curious about that as well. Like why do we do? Is it just we're obsessed with nostalgia? Is that what this is?
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, because somehow or another rock became very conservative. And I don't mean conservative in the political sense, because it's not that. It became very conservative and traditionalist, and kind of didn't ever really allow the fans didn't allow the next generation of artists to grow into stars. So that's why we don't have any new stars, and why you have to have fucking Disturbed headlining a festival in 2024.
Yeah, and I notice it, especially like I listen to probably a lot more punk than anything else, but especially with like the punk rock music scene, there hasn't really been any new bands coming out
that matter
or that are interesting or doing anything different
in like over 20 years.
Yeah, Green Day just put out another album,
and this is not me being like, oh, all this new music sucks, because I actually prefer new music to old music. But in punk specifically, I don't really think that anything important, like what important bands in punk have come along, in the last 20 years. Like,
I'm going to be honest, and maybe this is like
Like maybe like
controversial.
Anti-Flag would be
Yeah,
like one of the newer bands, you know?
yeah. Maybe this is controversial to say, but I think like a lot of the punk bands have just fallen off over the last 10 years. I mean, I don't really get a lot of punk rock mentality if I'm going to a punk show anymore,
No, it's
unfortunately.
because well, it's punk is now it's a style of music and fashion, not a mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, okay, so here's a question for you. Like you like hardcore and thrash metal a little bit, I'm assuming, maybe some bands.
Yeah, I mean, I like every kind of music.
Um, which would you say manifests that like kind of old school punk rock mentality better? Would you say it was the hardcore scene or the punk scene? Because for me, I'm like I've been to plenty of hardcore shows and it just feels so much more um I don't know, anti-establishment, I guess,
Yeah, I
and
agree with that. I mean, you know, if well,
countercultural, I guess.
yeah, I mean, punks get angry at hardcore kids, not the other way around. So I think that's a
Right.
good gauge of who's going against the grain more. I would
Right.
say, if anything, like punk now is like straight up establishment music.
I
Like
agree.
it's
Yeah.
not even like there's nothing threatening or countercultural about punk at all anymore. Like punk is like shills for the establishment. They're basically just fucking like Democrat activists at this point,
I
which
literally
is
I
fucking
so
absurd. And like, look, if you're a
yes.
Democrat, that's fine, but like, there's nothing wrong with that. But the idea of like a punk band, like supporting some sort of presidential figure is
Wild.
fucking insane to me. Like,
It is wild.
what the fuck are you doing?
I have so the other like book that I'm putting together is called All My Favorite Punk Bands Are Statists. And
Yeah, they are.
they are. And it's like I remember back in I think it was like 2009 or 10, maybe. Rage Against the Machine, Anti-Flag, Flowbots played at the Democratic National Convention
Right.
in Denver. I'm
Like,
like,
what the fuck?
this is not a world that I thought I'd be living in. And it's just
They're
gotten worse.
literally
I
shilling
mean,
for like the Democratic Party and Big Pharma. And I'm not like an anti-vaxxer or anything like that. I'm just
sure.
making the
Yeah, same.
observation that, you know, when you have these people speaking on behalf of giant institutions, like that's
Yeah.
not punk.
I'm certainly not against that either. But I would say that like if there was a time for there to be some kind of like punk rock like rise or revolution to happen within the scene, you would have thought it would happen within the last couple of
Well, it's
years.
happened in lots of places, just not in the punk scene,
That's what I'm
you
saying
know?
is like hardcore. It's like everyone's speaking up against this stuff. And then, we've got like people like, even like Phil Labonte,
Yeah.
who's a friend of mine, speaks up against some of it. But like, it's just not happening in the punk scene. And that's my problem is like, I'm a punk guy raised on punk rock
I think
and
punk is fucking stupid at this point. It's
it
fucking
is.
dumb. Like,
This is why I'm stuck in fucking 2005 and prior punk rock music at this
I
point.
mean, that's punk was always dumb in a lot of ways because it was always just sort of this like brain dead, like nihilism for the most part.
Yeah.
Hardcore, I think, is a little bit more, deliberate and sort of had more of a point of view. Punk was always sort of for like dummies, I think. But at least it was challenging and threatening at one point, and it definitely isn't now. It's just like
Yeah.
it's fucking stupid.
It's completely gone at this point. There's literally like no point in even
Right, and I'm
advocating.
sorry, but, like, I mean, I think Green Day and The Offspring are, like, great bands, but and they would probably agree with me. The idea of people taking them seriously as punk bands is it's bizarre that people, like,
Yeah.
with a straight face refer to The Offspring as, like, punk is insane to me. And, I mean,
Um,
nothing against them. They seem like cool guys, and, like, I have no problem with them, but it's just that's where we're at now was like,
yeah.
you're like, yeah, I
I'm
like punk, like The Offspring and fucking, I don't know, Zebra Head.
sure. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Like that's
I,
what punk is now.
I actually have one of the guys from Zebrahead coming on my show in a few weeks.
Look, no offense to
Yeah.
them.
But
I
I get
mean,
it. Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm like the portrait of punk either. I'm not.
Yeah, I guess like my point was is like, like I listened to punk as a kid because I liked the message. I liked that I was anti-establishment, countercultural, and now there's none of it. At least in the punk scene, but in the
No,
hardcore
alternative
scene,
music in general is the most fucking dogmatic group of like just brain dead group thinkers. Nobody can think for themselves. Nobody's willing to challenge anything. They're all just dogmatic fucking zombies walking the same direction as everybody else.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you completely. So a couple more questions before we wrap up. But I wanted to know, who are some of the artists that you've interviewed? Who are like some of the favorite artists that you've had on your show?
Like in terms of conversations that I had with them, or
Conversation,
do I
yeah,
like
like,
their music, or
no, like when it comes down to it, like I think like it's all about like having the good conversations, and some people are just way more down to earth,
yeah.
in real life than you would expect.
Let's see. Nothing Nowhere. That's a really good
Oh
one.
wow, yeah.
He's a really, really thoughtful guy. Sonny from POD also was really fun to talk to. Amos from Tesseract was really good. Um, yeah. I don't know. There's more I'm not thinking of.
I
I'll
love Sunny.
post a few.
I played some shows with POD, and they're always like stand-up guys. They literally like will go out of their way to just like see how you're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
He's very, very like thoughtful guy. Kept it super real and had a lot of I mean, he's seen a lot, so it was a good conversation.
That's awesome. And then I have to ask, I was just texting with Franz,
Mhm.
Chris Franzak earlier today from Attila, who I recruited to run for president
Mhm.
under the Libertarian Party. And we put out a video a couple months ago. Unfortunately, over the last couple months, I found a bone tumor and I'm trying to heal up on that.
Oh shit! I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay. I actually got good news today that I can remove it with surgery and I don't have to do radiation. So
And
I've got good news there.
the prognosis is good, that they feel
It
like
is.
you'll end up being cancer free and you'll be good.
Exactly. So
It was a
I'm stoked
malignant
about
tumor.
that. It was a malignant tumor, yes.
That's scary shit.
Yeah, it was. I've been freaking out for the last couple months, but I
Bone
finally
cancer
have
is not
answers.
fucking fun.
No, my leg is in pain. I have to use crutches to get around everywhere. It is not fun.
I'm sorry to hear that.
It's okay. So basically, long story short, I had to take some time away from actually doing stuff with him on this, but I'm going to be getting back into it soon, as soon as my surgery's cleared up. But like I said, I was texting him earlier today, and we're genuinely curious, and he wants to know, and I want to know, will you be his running mate and be his vice president?
I've chosen to step away from my vice presidential campaign to focus on my family.
Okay.
That's what people say when they're about to get canceled.
Okay. Okay. I mean, that makes you significantly more punk rock for saying that. So
Yeah, I can't run for president because I did a podcast with Blair White, which according to Twitter makes me a transphobe. Very ironic that speaking to the trans
I fucking
girl,
love Blair White. She's awesome.
having the trans girl on my podcast makes me a transphobe. It's very interesting.
Absolutely
But
wild.
yeah, I can't run for president because Twitter will call me a transphobe even more than they already do. Which, by
It's
the way,
okay.
I always challenge these people. Please find one transphobic thing I've ever said, and they can't because it's never happened.
Right. No, like literally like that. People will just pull shit out of their asses. Like over the last like 48 hours, I get into Twitter arguments all the time for literally no reason other
Yeah.
than I have nothing else to do right now. So, like, I don't know. I was arguing about like, I was trying to say like just random stuff. Like, I don't think like the government should ban something like
Mhm.
whatever. And my comments are just like, are you Jewish? Are you Jewish? So like now I'm Jewish. Now I'm a Jew. So like this is like just what they go to, or I'm transphobic, or which is not true at all. I have plenty of friends that are trans. It's just like I've never said any of the things that you are suggesting. But
It doesn't matter. Facts don't matter. The only thing that matters is people have decided that the world is a certain way.
right.
And no matter what facts or other information that they're presented with, they're always going to, like, for example, people, I wear Nike stuff a lot, not even particularly because like I love Nike so much or something. It just happens to fit me well. So I buy it. And people always talk shit about that because it's not punk, because you're not allowed to wear Nike apparently if you're punk, which I think is really funny. The idea that there's this like punk uniform. And so they always bring up the notion of sweatshops, and I always tell them, well, I worked for Abercrombie and Fitch for a few years. I've actually spent months and months and months at factories in Asia. And just so you know, all factories these days are heavily audited for labor rights. So, sweatshops, like that does sort of happen, but there's a lot of practices in place to prevent it from happening. And when it does happen, it's not because the customer, meaning, someone like Nike, wanted it to happen. It's because the factory sort of did it under their nose. And I know this because I've been to these and I worked with the people that do these audits and stuff like that. And everyone just sort of instantly is like, yeah, well, what would you know? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, what do I know? I only spent months and months and months and months at factories in China and Singapore and Indonesia. Sorry, China and Indonesia.
Yeah.
And Korea and Japan. But what do I know?
Yeah.
You're the expert. You're the guy on the internet with the opinion.
It's just a bunch of reactionaries. That's what it is. That's everything's reactionary now. But Finn, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking to you. Awesome interview. I guess tell everyone that doesn't know where they can find your stuff. And obviously I encourage everyone to check out Punk Rock MBA and all of your channels. But yeah, go ahead.
You can search my name on Google and then go read a bunch of Reddit threads about how I'm a right-wing transphobic bigot.
Perfect. And you'll find all of his stuff for his channels and also his YouTube marketing coaching stuff as well. Cool. Well, I'll drop you backstage for a quick second and I will wrap up the show. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in again on Shut the Punk Up. This coming Wednesday, I have Mitch Connor coming on to the show. He's a good dude, and I'm stoked to have him on. We're going to talk about his podcast, Swamp Creatures, and some other cool little things like why New Hampshire's significantly better and more free than Florida. So I hope to see you there. And yeah, y'all have a fantastic night.